Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of RPM Flows with Dr. G. I'm so excited to invite you to another episode where we will be covering an important theme today, and that is psychological resilience. But before we go into that, there is this greeting that I like to practice with people that I've gotten really close to. And so I'm going to share that greeting, and I'm going to start doing that greeting at the beginning and possibly at the end as well of each podcast. And I learned it from Florence Scovel Shinn from one of her books and some of her travels. And in essence, it's, I honor and salute the divinity in you. Okay. And I love that because it really emphasizes what are those divine elements within. And if you do that and whisper it or say it in your mind to everyone you meet on a daily basis, I think you will find that your psychological resilience, along with all the other resiliencies, will become more powerful, and you will start to see more of the brighter side and the more positive and optimistic parts of everyone you meet. So just to quickly recap, RPM flows. If you recall from last episode, I went through each one in a little bit of detail. I'm not going to do that today, but in essence, resilience is R, and we talk about that from a holistic sense. So psychological resilience, emotional resilience, physical resilience, spiritual resilience, cultural resilience, personal resilience. And so that's going to be one of those resiliencies is the topic for today. When we delve deeper into psychological resilience, the P and the M are for purpose and meaning, and the F is for fun, the L is for love, the O is for oneness, W is wonderment, and the S is for synchronicity. How do all these elements work in tandem? Do they seem balanced and working together? Or do they seem really disjointed and fragmented? And if so, it's time to probably reflect on how do I get more internal flow in my life? Because as we gain internal flow, then everything externally is a lot smoother. But if internally we don't have resilience, we don't have purpose, meaning a sense of fun or love for ourselves, feeling connected to everything else, but first feeling connected to yourself holistically, and or not doing things that get out of your comfort zone, then yeah, you're going to feel out of sync. Okay. So as far as psychological resilience, it's important to reflect on what does it mean to bounce back from challenge or adversity, or when life knocks you down. How do we summon the inner strength to persevere even when the odds feel insurmountable? And psychological resilience is all about cultivating those habits of mind to help us overcome whatever challenge or adversity or difficulty that we may be facing. And as we sharpen those habits, those mental habits and psychological habits, then it spills into all the other resiliencies, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, the cultural, the interpersonal. So that's why I believe it's the most significant. Because if you don't have a healthy relationship with your thoughts, then your emotional functioning is going to be off kilter, as well as the decisions you make. Maybe your spiritual journey is going to feel broken, or without meaning, without purpose. Your cultural understanding of yourself, like who you truly are, the values, your beliefs, customs that you were taught, may start getting really jumbled or vague or fuzzy or uncertain. And so it's important that we start with psychological resilience, because as we cultivate healthier thoughts, then we start to feel the rest of ourselves, our whole selves, become more complete. So as we explore these themes of psychological resilience, I'm going to share with you my Find Your Flow moment for today, which is from my own lived experience when I was a young child, probably around 4 years old or so, and I was learning how to tie my shoes in Costa Rica, where I was born. And next, we'll discuss this one quote, one of my favorite quotes. It's actually in my email signature, and that quote has inspired me ever since I read it. It has inspired me to live a life that fulfills that quote. And it's by Viktor Frankl, who was an Austrian psychologist, neurologist, and I'll tell you more about him as we delve into that quote. But I'll also integrate some other authors like Mel Robbins, Susan Jeffers, Nelson Mandela, and hopefully leave you with some practical tools to help you cultivate psychological resilience in your life. So let's take another deep breath and flow into today's topic. And I hope it makes sense to you and it inspires you to start to look at life in the way that he looked at life, despite all the darkness and just the worst of the human condition that he suffered through and that he witnessed day in and day out for years. So this is how it goes. Everything can be taken away from a person, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, the ability to choose one's own attitude in any given set of circumstances, the ability to choose one's own way. So I want you to sit with that quote, let it marinate. What does it mean to you? And it's important to reflect, how often do we feel powerless in the face of challenges, forgetting that the power to choose how we respond is always ours. Resilience and psychological resilience begins there, with the ability to focus on not what's happening to us, but on how we engage with it and how we make meaning out of it. And this aligns with Nelson Mandela's lived experiences. I have a suggestion for a great book called The Long Walk to Freedom. And one of his quotes is, "I never lose. I either win or I learn. Every setback can be reframed as an opportunity for growth or an opportunity to learn something new." So we never lose. We're either winning or we're learning. And I think that's a great way to cultivate psychological resilience as well, with that kind of mantra. And then what if your next challenge is actually an opportunity to practice this freedom of choice? How might that shift your perspective? So as I mentioned, what I'm going to be talking about today is one of my earliest memories when I was a child. I was around 4 years old. And if I get a little emotional recounting this, please give me grace. But anyway, I was 4 years old. I was living, I believe, with my paternal grandmother at the time, who was elderly and frail. And my sister and I, we were basically living with her because a lot of other family members really weren't interested in helping raise us, or just, it was a complicated situation, let's just say that. And so this was like the last option, in essence, living with her. And she really couldn't take care of us. but she did the best she could. I do remember that. But anyway, on this day, I remember I had been gifted or had been given or bought a new pair of shoes. And so I was really excited, as a 4-year-old, you're like, oh, new shoes, and I don't think I had too many pairs of shoes. So to get a nice pair of shoes was a big thing in my 4-year-old mind, for sure. So I do remember putting them on and was hurrying to see, if I could go run around and jump around in them. However, what was between me and running around and jumping around was tying them. And I was sitting, I believe, in the backyard on a step, and I just remember for a very long time continuously trying to tie my shoes. And it seemed that it would take it probably took maybe an hour, but it seemed like hours and hours in my 4-year-old mind. So I do recall, after a prolonged amount of time, tears would started to form, and the tears were, I believe, from the frustration, from feeling helpless, but also feeling really stubborn and determined that I'm gonna do this. And that was that first initial spark of divinity or divine energy that I can recall ever in my life, where there was something took a hold of me, and I just was so determined, I'm going to tie these shoes. And nobody had taught me, nobody was sitting next to me saying, hey, let's work on this together, or this is how you do it. So ultimately it was just me, myself, and I trying to figure this out at 4 years old. And I did countless figurations with the shoelaces, and then finally I was able to solve the issue. And I just finally, when I tied my shoes that very first time, and I was able to untie them and repeat the same approach, I was uber excited and felt this relief just wash over me, and also a feeling of empowerment, and just like, I can do this, I got this, I can count on me, And so those were the roots, the origins of this psychological resilience that I believe that's when it started. And throughout my entire life, I have been able to utilize that same resilience to push through adversity in my life. And this wasn't just about tying my shoes. It was about that determination, the patience, learning to trust in my own ability. And that moment of triumph has stayed with me until now, and that's why I'm recounting it. So I want you to think, what's a small win in your past that at the time you probably didn't think much of it, but as the days, the weeks, the months, and the years have passed on, when you look back at that small win, you say, wow, that was a really powerful moment for me, and that enhanced my psychological resilience tremendously. So as I hope that this story inspires you to reflect on your own moments of psychological resilience, whether it was in early life or in adolescence or early adulthood or middle adulthood or later adulthood. Okay, so now let's transition to a quote, one of my favorite quotes that is one of my personal heroes. I wish I would have been able to meet him. His name is Viktor Frankl. He actually died, I want to say back in the 90s, but he's an inspiration because he was Jewish, and he suffered at Auschwitz concentration camp during the Nazi regime, and he had lost a lot of his family. But what he recalled, well, he part of, I guess, his collective experience in the concentration camp helped him to develop this one quote, reading a lot of inspirational works. And so I'm going to be integrating a lot of that into these podcasts. And so Mel Robbins reminds us of the 5-second rule and the high five habit. So I'll unpack that a little bit more. She writes about how when we wake up in the morning, it's important for us to give ourselves 5 seconds to wake up. And you can either count 1 to 5, but she suggests counting backwards from 5. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, get out of bed. Let's get going with the day. And then when we get to the mirror, because that's probably where we're going to first, in the bathroom, we splash some water on our face, we look in the mirror, and what I tell myself is I love myself. I appreciate myself, flaws and all. And then I'll do 5 high fives, just like this. High five, high five, high five, high five, high five. And I'll also do that in the rearview mirror when I'm driving. And she talks about the high five habit, that if you give yourself a high five during the action, the process of doing the high five, there's really no room for negativity. There's no room for self-doubt or self-diminishment. So it's a very critical skill to learn. And I believe that if you do it for weeks and months and years, I've only been doing it for 10 days now, but I do find that I've learned to be present with myself, to accept myself, and really love myself in a way that maybe I hadn't really thought about before. Just with that simple act, and then telling myself some affirmations such as, I believe in myself, I was born for special reasons, I have unique talents that no one else has, and my job is to find out what those are. And also, my seemingly impossible excellence now comes to pass. Everything and everybody prospers me now, and I prosper everything and everybody now. God or the universe or the divine now prospers me now. Okay? So these are some suggested affirmations for you. There's a lot of great affirmations out there that you can Google, or just look for great certain books that have them as well. But I believe that waking up within those 5 seconds, doing the high five habit, giving yourself some positive affirmations, and finding ways to be kind to yourself every day, you're going to be a new person in no time. But you've got to do it. You got to stick to it. At least for 21 days, make it a habit. That's the threshold for a habit, if you do something for 21 days. So I'm hoping that you will join me in doing that daily, so that you will empower yourself and cultivate that psychological resilience that is so critical for our daily functioning. So as we wrap up, remember this: resilience is not a trait you're born with, okay? It's a skill you can develop, whether it's through choosing your attitude like Viktor Frankl, reframing losses like Nelson Mandela, taking bold action like Mel Robbins, and just facing your fears every day. I think these are the ways that we're going to cultivate psychological resilience. So tell me what resonates with you from today's episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts, stories of resilience, or questions for future episodes, or ideas that you may have for future episodes. Please drop a comment, send me a message, connect with me on social media, on Instagram, RPM Flows with Dr. G. Your voice matters, and together we're building a community that thrives in the flow. So until next time, this is Dr. G reminding you to live authentically and embrace the RPM flows kind of day in life. And let your life's flow be purposeful and free on RPM Flows with Dr. G. Thank you so much. Oh, and You know who else thanks you? Coda, my golden doodle, who's busy chewing her bone. But she reminds me to be resilient every day and to have fun and not take life too seriously. So until next time, I honor and salute the divinity in you. Adios.